We're joined now by Bamidele Salami, who is the Director Media Office of the SA to the President on Public Affairs. He joins us from our Abuja studios. Morning, Mr. Salami, and thank you for coming on today. Well, yes, indeed, you may have seen that report, FG beating their chest in this midterm report. But looking at that report, and when also you hear people say, well, yeah, if you say you've done some of these ones, you have to compare it with your ultimate target, the plan, a 4-year plan, which you say you are going to achieve. Can you still thumb yourself up, having seen the 4-year plan and how far you've gone so far?
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. If I heard you well, you were trying to ask whether the midterm report presented by President Goodluck Jonathan's administration, when laid side by side with the projection of the first 4-year term, is justifiable. And I want to tell you something that the first thing we have to appreciate is the fact that it is only a government that believes that it has reached a particular degree of milestone in its contract with the people that comes up with a report in its midterm. And if you recall, when the president was being sworn in on the 29th of May 2011, he did, reel out a set of agenda which are encapsulated in the transformation agenda as the target of his government, the social contract, upon which he was elected into government by the Nigerian people. Now, 2 years down the line, I can say very confidently that Mr. President has justified that confidence, and in some instances has even gone above the 50% mark that one would have expected in a midterm report. In a 4-year administration, you set a target for yourself, and after 2 years, for example, let me talk about agriculture. The immediate target of the administration, in agriculture, was to ensure that Nigeria's dependence on food importation is reduced by at least 60%, and also ensure that agriculture moves from just being a development program to being a business model, which will be a job creator for the teeming youths who are unemployed, and also ensure that Nigeria attracts new investment in that sector. Now, what have we achieved within 2 years? Within 2 years, this government has successfully reduced importation of rice, for example, by about 50%, has successfully reduced importation on wheat by about 30%, has successfully re-engineered the cassava subsector of the agricultural industry in Nigeria, to the extent that Nigeria now, exports millions of tons of cassava chips and other products made from cassava to the international community. Nigeria has successfully attracted investment in this sector to the tune of about $8 billion. This is unprecedented. If you also look at the power sector, which is like the most controversial sector that some people talk about now, we can't find light. Now, we have to understand that when this government came on board, it was confronted with some challenges of, inadequate generation of power, problems of transmission, and inadequate infrastructure for distribution of the power generated. Within 2 years, this government almost doubled the capacity of this country to generate electricity. The government met almost, a little below 3,000 megawatts. Today we are doing about 4,500. Yesterday, I was listening to the managing director of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company on your station, Mr. Olotu, who spoke about the 10 NIPP projects which were in a state of comatose by the time President Jonathan came into office in 2011. Today, those independent power projects have been completed, and government is in the process of, getting private investors to buy into them and take over their running. You also talk about, the privatization and deregulation of the power sector. Don't forget, it was in 2005 that the power sector reform bill was passed into law. But it never took off, in a meaningful way until the president came on board and put up a road, a power sector roadmap, which included effective implementation of the privatization exercise. Today, the power holding company of Nigeria has been unbundled into 16 generation companies, 11 distribution companies, and 1 transmission company, all in a bid to ensure that we have a private sector driven power sector in line with international best practices. We'll talk about the road, the transportation sector, the road, the railways, the aviation sector. Virtually every one of these sectors have measurable impact that has been made in the last 2 years. And when you put them side by side, the 4-year timeline, which this administration has as a first contract with the Nigerian people, I want to tell you that surely a lot has been done, and there's a justifiable performance base to show that by 2015, when President Goodluck Jonathan will complete his first term, there will have been, in most cases, even a surpassing of the target set by this administration.
Well, Mr. Salami, I think, if I have to go back, it looks like it hasn't actually answered the question posed by Chamberlain. The question really was, what's the target of this administration in comparison to your own target, not in comparison to what obtained in past administration? Have we done well?
Yes. Hello, you're asking, if I get you very well, I lost, the audio at a point. You're asking whether, compared with the state target of this administration, I will say this administration has done well. Exactly what I've just told you. If you have a contract with the people based on a manifesto, now and you're elected into office, you can only be assessed on that manifesto, that social contract document which you entered into with the Nigerian people. And I've just told you, this man came on board, promised Nigerians that, okay, you haven't had the rail service, for example, in the last 20-something years. I'm going to revitalize the railway system. And 2 years down the line, he has actually revitalized, the western routes of the Nigerian railway, the Lagos, Kano rail service. The eastern axis, which runs from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, is 77% completed. There are new corridors of railways that have been opened, in the rail transport sector. The Abuja-Kaduna new standard gauge rail line is over 60% completed. There is a new gauge rail line also starting which has been awarded to run from Ibadan to Lagos. Now, if you look at the world all over, you will discover that the railway industry is one of the biggest job creators, employers of labor in virtually every part of the world. And you are talking about a government that promised that we're going to revitalize this sector, and it has indeed started the revitalization. The railway today moves an average of like 32,000 people every single day in Nigeria. New feasibility studies have been done to open up, new corridors of rail service, which will run from Lagos to Benin and a few other routes that were not covered, by the existing rail line. You also have a situation where, in the road sector, this government has successfully rehabilitated and constructed about 2,000 kilometers of roads. The Honorable Minister of Works was on air yesterday, doing what democracy is all about, giving an update, a report of accountability on what the government has done in the road infrastructure. About 2,000 kilometers of roads, 32 of them already completed. He gave facts, he gave figures, and these were projects that are verifiable. Right, this was a program that was held live on television with people coming to ask questions. So what I'm saying is that there is indeed a justification of that mandate, because most of these targets are being met by President Goodluck Jonathan administration.
What improvement is there in the manufacturing sector?
Okay, very good question. Now, you have to understand one thing about the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector, thrives first and foremost on the power sector. You can only have a very viable, manufacturing industry where you have stable power system. And what government is doing in the power sector, like I've told you, is that we have to first of all increase the quantum of power that is available for distribution and transmission. We have reached a significant level now, and before the end of this year, with the completion of the NIPP project and other reforms that are taking place in the power sector, Nigeria will surely make close to 10,000 megawatts of power. Now we can say that is not enough for the manufacturing sector, but it is a starting point. If you are coming from a position of 2,000 plus to 10,000, surely most of these industries that have closed shop will start coming back on stream. For example, let me also tell you something about the textile industry. Before the Jonathan administration came on board, there was no single seed of cotton that was the major raw material for the manufacturing, for the textile industry, which was the manufacturing sector. Today, there is a cotton revolution component of the agricultural transformation agenda, which has successfully led to a revitalization of the cotton industry in Kano, in Kebbi, in Katsina, and most of the states in the northwest and the northeastern region. What you're going to have is that most of the textile industries that have closed shop are already coming back on stream. Now, you also talk about we can also talk about the investment that we're having by some major manufacturing concerns, world manufacturing concerns. Procter & Gamble, which is the world's largest product manufacturing company, is building a $250 million plant in Ogun State, an initiative of the Federal Ministry of Trade and Investment, which was created by this government. If this comes on board, which it will surely do, because the groundbreaking ceremony is taking place on the 10th of July, you can imagine what a plant of that nature, the largest plant of that nature in Africa, will result into in terms of job creation. So by the time you get the transportation sector working, you have the power sector working, surely the manufacturing sector will buy into it.
Could you hang on a bit? Could you give us an idea so that those who are watching will also be on the same page? What is the achievement so far in the manufacturing sector? I mean, I know you're looking at what was in the past administration. Yes, you can look at that again while responding to this one. What was the situation then? What is it now? And what is the target of this administration in terms of the manufacturing sector?
I have just told you now, Chamberlain, that before this administration